appreciated. And I'm going to hit record on the call as soon as the reporters join in. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are holding this press call this morning in reaction to two bills that have been sent to governors in different states over the course of the last 24 hours. In South Dakota yesterday morning, we saw SB 124, a religious refusal bill, sent to Governor Noem in South Dakota. That marks the first anti-LGBTQ bill sent to a governor's desk in the 2021 session, as well as SB 2536 in Mississippi, an anti-trans sports bill. And we wanted to mark this occasion by talking through some of the logistics and context and implications of this legislation passing in states, and make sure that everyone understands not just the passage of these bills, but the national context for what's happening in this legislative session in 2021. We are joined by local voices in Mississippi and in South Dakota, as well as national voices such as Alfonso David, president of the Human Rights Campaign. And we will begin our program by introducing Alfonso. I will quickly mention that at the end of our speaking program, we will have an opportunity to ask questions. Please, if you have a question, put it in the chat that you'd like to ask one. I will call on you, and then feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question either directly to one of our participants or to the group more broadly. And just as a forewarning, we are recording this call so that we can share it out to folks who didn't have an opportunity to join us this morning. So thank you to everyone for joining. And with that, we are going to start with the president of the Human Rights Campaign, Alfonso David.
Thank you so much, Wyatt. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As you heard, I am the president of the Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights organization in the country and around the world. In states across the country, we are facing an emergency. Anti-equality forces are attacking our families. They're attacking our children. They're attacking our dignity, and they're attacking our existence. Today, along with my colleagues that you will hear from, I want to make clear to everyone who joined this call that we are going to hold these anti-equality forces accountable. What they are doing is not only unacceptable, but is dangerous. Yesterday, Mississippi passed an anti-transgender bill. It's called SB 2536. And this bill would ban transgender women and girls from participating in sports consistent with their gender identity. While millions of people in Mississippi are waiting for urgent relief as it relates to COVID-19, the leaders in Mississippi are not focused on that. Rather, they're focused on prioritizing bullying against transgender kids. At the same time, the South Dakota Senate has sent legislation to the governor's desk that would grant a license to discriminate against LGBTQ people across a wide range of goods and services. This bill threatens protections for LGBTQ people, for women, and for people of faith. Unfortunately, these two bills are at the forefront of a dangerous and discriminatory trend that we're seeing, a part of a coordinated attack by anti-LGBTQ extremist organizations that are seeking to undermine our progress. Currently, there are 131 anti-LGBTQ bills under consideration in state legislatures across the country. Of those, 71 of those bills directly target transgender people. These bills are similar, and these efforts are similar to what we've seen before. In the run-up to marriage equality, as an example, we saw a concerted effort in states from anti-equality lawmakers. They were spreading fear and spreading misinformation about LGBTQ people with clear intentions of undermining our equality. And now Following the House of Representatives passage of the Equality Act, we're seeing another dangerous uptick in state capitals across the country. These efforts are well coordinated. And as I said before, they're dangerous. These bills are not designed to solve a problem or address a constituent concern. Rather, these leaders, anti-LGBTQ leaders, if you call them leaders, are taking painstaking efforts to legislate against LGBTQ people. And ask yourselves, what is the problem that they're trying to solve? They're trying to advance fear and hate and bigotry. And they're propagated by extremist organizations like the Heritage Foundation, Alliance Defending Freedom. They're all advancing these bills and using a national coordinated effort. We need to make sure that we tell everyone around the country what they're actually doing. They're targeting transgender kids for political gain. That's what they're doing. Transgender kids, including trans girls, participating in sports harms no one. Advocates for women and girls in sports, such as the National Women's Law Center, the Women's Sports Foundation, the women's leaders in college sports, and others support trans inclusive policies. And these organizations oppose efforts to exclude transgender students from participating in sports. There are real issues with gender parity in athletics when it comes to funding, when it comes to resources, when it comes to pay equity and more. But excluding transgender students or transgender people from sports is not a problem. They're creating a problem that doesn't exist. They're promoting baseless fears about trans athletes, and it does nothing to address the problems that really do exist. And furthermore, we're in a global pandemic. Our focus should be on protecting and educating our children, not isolating them further or teaching them that they or their classmates are less than anyone else. These dangerous bills need to be stopped, and we're going to work with our partners across the country to stop them. We're going to hold these elected officials accountable, make sure they understand that they're harming LGBT people, harming families, and we're not going to go away. We exist. We will continue to exist, and we will fight for equality. We need to be treated just like everyone else. And these coordinated attacks, maybe they'll win here or there, but they will ultimately lose. We've seen this playbook before. And so we're here today to make sure that all of you understand that we're seeing an uptick in anti-LGBTQ legislation across the country. We are going to continue to fight against these bills. We're going to continue to hold these legislators accountable, and we're going to continue to advance equality for LGBTQ people. We should all be treated fairly under the law. We shouldn't be treated as second-class citizens. And that's essentially what our opponents are trying to advocate. I thank you all for joining us this morning, and I thank my colleagues for joining us as well.
Thank you, Alfonso. Next, we are going to hear from ACLU of South Dakota, Jana Farley.
Hello. Thank you for having me today. Like I said, my name is Jana Farley. I am the Communications Director for the ACLU of South Dakota. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 124. Now, the inspiration for Senate Bill 124 was witnessing the unequal restrictions on religious versus secular services during the COVID-19 pandemic. People want to ensure that religious conduct is treated equally to secular conduct and, to protect those religious freedoms. Now, the ACLU of South Dakota did not oppose the original intent of this bill. Freedom of religion is one of our most fundamental rights as Americans, and that's why it's protected in state and federal constitutions. But that freedom does not give any of us the right to harm others. Senate Bill 124, as written, could be used to harm others. And we are concerned that some of the language used could open the door for discrimination against religious minorities, LGBTQ+, and Two-Spirit people, and other vulnerable communities on the basis of religion. There are many examples where people have claimed a violation of their right to religious freedom in order to justify discrimination, undermine public safety, and jeopardize the uniform enforcement of laws. This has placed the burden on states to enforce their laws in expensive court proceedings against those who claim exemptions. In Minnesota, for example, a landlord citing his religious beliefs refused to rent to an unmarried couple. In Oklahoma, a police officer citing his religious beliefs refused to attend or direct other officers to attend an event held by the Islamic Society of Tulsa. In Idaho, when an individual's driver's license application was denied on the basis that he did not provide a Social Security card, he sued the Department of Transportation, claiming that their denial violated the state's Religious Freedom Restoration Act because providing his Social Security card was against his religion. The potential that this bill could open up the door for discrimination against LGBTQ+ and Two-Spirit people was brought up during the committee hearings, but was disregarded. And we urged lawmakers to amend Senate Bill 124, but unfortunately no amendments were made. And now the bill is headed to Governor Noem's desk.
Thank you, Jana. Next, we are going to hear from Jarvis Dorth of ACLU of Mississippi to speak on the first anti-transgender bill passed through the legislature and sent to the governor's desk. Jarvis?
Thank you. And thank you to HRC for pulling this together, and for our local partners, Rob Hill, for the work he's been doing. And let me say thank you to my staff that's been working on this since the session started and have been putting in a lot of work to stop these bills and other terrible voter suppression bills over the past few weeks. The passage of SB 2536 is disheartening and deeply frustrating. It's deeply frustrating because we all know that Mississippi is a state with serious structural problems. Many of us live and work in a city that hasn't had a working water system for 3 weeks. We all live in a state where thousands can't afford health care even during a pandemic because our legislators chose politics over expanding Medicaid. We have a criminal justice system and a mental health system that are on the verge of being taken over by the federal government. We have an aging population, young people fleeing fleeing our state. There are dozens of hard issues that affect Mississippians of all races and gender. But instead of taking on these common challenges that truly impact our daily lives, our Mississippi legislators are choosing to divide us and legislate based on hate and fear. SB 2536 is yet another example of the legislature legislating based on division and fear. The purpose of SB 2536 is not to protect women athletes, it's to tell transgender kids that they do not belong, that they're not welcome. That's the message these lawmakers are sending, and it's shameful, but it's also harmful. Transgender kids, like other students, deserve the same chance to learn teamwork, sportsmanship, leadership, and self-discipline, and to build a sense of belonging with their peers. Transgender kids want the opportunity to play sports for the same reason other kids do, to be a part of a team where they feel like they belong. We shouldn't discriminate against kids and ban them for playing sports because they're transgender. Lastly, I want to point out that the legislators that have been supporting this bill can't even be truthful when trying to defend it. Yesterday, Representative Becky Curry didn't take questions on the bill when it came up in the House, but she did take the time to stand before her colleagues and lie about how this discriminatory bill could affect Mississippi. SB 2536 is modeled after an Idaho bill, which Curry claimed didn't have any consequences to that state. The truth is, the Idaho bill was immediately blocked by a federal court. The court concluded that the law was based on nothing more than discrimination against trans people. Curry also claimed that the NC2A has no stance on legislation such as SB 2536. The truth is, the NCAA has come out against the Idaho anti-trans athletic bill, and they have called it harmful to transgender student athletes and against the NCAA's core values. The statement also said that such a legislation, it will be considered when states seek to host tournaments or other NCAA events. So Governor Reeves should know before he signs this bill that Mississippi will face consequences for this for SB 2536. And the reason for that is because we need to remember that this bill is really about what this bill is really about. It's about whether transgender men and women should be treated fairly across all areas of life, or whether they can be unfairly kicked out of a restaurant, denied an apartment, or denied health care they need just because of who they are. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on this issue.
Thank you, Jarvis. And finally, we'll be going to our final speaker, Katie Binstead, who is the parent of a transgender young person in Mississippi. Katie, thank you for joining the call, and you have the floor.
Hi, I'm actually a cisgender woman with a transgender daughter. She's in middle school in Mississippi, and that is not easy for her to begin with because she faces bullying on a daily basis, and the school district claims that they cannot enforce students and staff to use her name and pronouns because of religion or whatever reason. Me and my daughter are Christian people. So I want to put that out there as people, especially in South Dakota, are trying to make a religious argument out of this. Me and my family are a Christian family. We attend church every Sunday. We have a nice affirming church, but I know that most aren't like that. One of the things I wanted to say about the bill as it relates to my daughter is, number one, it's sexist because I don't see it targeting transgender men. And for sports or anything else, once we start to other people, put them against us, that's going to go a long way. We can take that so far, because what if tomorrow we decide that in our sports tournaments that we are going to have cheerleaders must be blonde and skinny, that then others everybody else. And then you have, well, what weight requirement, what hairstyle. And it's kind of a ridiculous example, but it could be taken that far once you start othering other people. My daughter has enough trouble in school anyway. And so actually she had asked to join the girls' basketball team. And when the principal got back to me, he sent me a message, and he used, number one, he used her dead name. Number two, he told me that the district requires her to play on the boys' team because of the gender on her birth certificate, which shows that our school districts don't even understand the difference between sex and gender. And my daughter isn't comfortable playing with the boys because she's not a boy and she never has been a boy. And they're saying she can't play girls basketball based on a gender assigned at birth that was incorrect. And the thing about a lot of these bills as it relates to my daughter is she's autistic, and there's so many mental health issues at play here. A lot of kids that are transgender, if they're not affirmed, the mental health risk of them dying by suicide is quite high. And so bills like this that other her and are not affirming towards her, that puts her risk of dying by suicide a lot higher. But thankfully she has an affirming parent, which makes the biggest difference in the world. And I'm here to be able to fight for her rights, because she has the right to be playing sports or anything else, clubs, even to have the basic human respect, to be gendered correctly, have her name used. And part of Christianity for me, actually, when we take our baptismal vows, is we promise to respect the dignity of every human being. And that is a very Christian idea. So when we start using it with religion, my Christianity says that you treat people with respect, and a basic respect is to recognize trans people for who they are. And I realize I'm speaking as a cisgender woman, but that is what I'm fighting with my daughter.
Katie, thank you so much for sharing that really powerful story and stepping forward to present that to everyone today. Before we open the floor up for questions, I'll also mention that we are joined today by Sarah Warblow, who is our legal director, and Catherine Kate Oakley, who is our state legislative director and senior counsel. And they are also available to direct questions to and are able to answer questions relating to the specifics around these bills. So with that, I will give everyone on the call a chance to pop into the chat and let me know that you have a question to ask of one of our participants. And I will call on you, and you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. First, I'm seeing